Hey everyone, Brian here with DIY Outdoor Life. Today we are out here on the road. We're still thousands of miles away from home, and I went to do a little bit of maintenance on this lock and roll hitch, and I decided I was going to make a simple modification that would just make this whole process a lot easier. With any sort of maintenance, the easier you make it for yourself, the more routine you do it. So I'm going to bring you along with me today. I'm going to show you what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. It shouldn't take too long, so let's get to it. So with a normal ball and coupler, basically the only maintenance that I do is I use a little dry graphite spray on there. And I've done that video in the past. Some people prefer white lithium, but the idea is a good dry lubricant on your standard style of coupler is cleaner. It doesn't pick up road debris, and it makes everything work a little bit more buttery. Now, I still do that on the lock and roll. I like to get it down in these two little saddles here. And you see it's coming off on my hand, which it will. It's cleaner than using like axle grease, but you can still wipe this off. It's like pencil on your hand. And you could spray a little up here as well. But the idea is where it moves, having a little bit of dry lubricant just keeps everything effortlessly going and it doesn't make any sound. Again, if you put a couple globs of axle grease here, it's gonna work well at first, it's gonna make a mess, and the first time you drive down a dirt road, it has this candy apple effect where it just picks up gravel and everything. So if you were to imagine just kind of doing this on your hand, eventually it's gonna get hot. You put a little lubricant there and it stops it from getting hot. But if you put some grease there and sprinkled some sand on it, you'd be worse off than if you did nothing at all. So that's my preference for dry graphite spray and why I keep a can of this in the car, and I do it frequently, just little sprays. But what separates a lock and roll coupler from a standard style is it has some degrees of freedom here and degrees of freedom here. This is metal on metal and it requires some lubrication. So what they want from the factory here is for you to lubricate this frequently. And if you come on in here, they give you this tiny little fitting here. I think it's 7 millimeters. That's for a needle fitting, a needle nose grease fitting. A standard grease gun, you need a little attachment to get in there. And what I've noticed and read online with my own as well is it was covered in paint and you kind of have to pick it off and it's a little bit of a pain. And if you look over here, there's one here as well and it's the same thing. It takes the needle fitting on a grease gun. Now, I have one of those at home. I have a couple of those at home, but bringing all this stuff on the road for maintenance can be a little annoying, and this is something that you want to keep up on. If you keep putting a little grease in there, it's going to be much better than just doing a big one once a season. The reason they use these needle fittings is because they don't shear off. It's much harder to damage these. But from my perspective, I just disagree with that. A normal straight grease fitting, that's a 6 mil grease zerk or a grease fitting, just a straight one. This is a lot easier to use, and although this can get sheared off, I don't know what you're putting your hitch through, but mine's pretty well protected. If you were just driving through like brush or something like that, but I mean, we use these on excavators and tractors and things that are digging in the ground. They usually hold up pretty well. If they do get sheared off, there's a little tool that extracts them and they cost next to nothing. You just throw another one in. If it happened on the road, you'd make it to get back home before you had to do that job. It's not as critical as something that would have to be done immediately. So when we're out on the road, we want to bring a lot of tools with us, but we don't want to take up all of our camping space. I know Lucia from behind the camera right now is already complaining at the amount of tools that I brought with me on this trip. So this might be something that's better off to do at home, but on the road, it is a good idea. I have this DeWalt set. It's exclusive to the truck. It has almost everything you need. You have to supplement it with some pliers or a couple different vice grips or things that were left out. But what I like about it is it comes in a hard case. You could stack stuff on it and go behind a seat, under a seat, or if you are playing Jenga, it's got a good hard case that can supply. It costs a couple bucks. It's the perfect quality for staying with the vehicle. It's not junk that's gonna break, but it's not a set of Snap-on or something that you're making payments on. So for this job, I do recommend a pair of gloves. I always have a pair of gloves like this, but disposable gloves for any time we're doing grease is a great idea. This is a set of, it's like Gojo, they're called Grime Boss. I'll put these in the description as well. You can pick these up on the road or buy them on Amazon. This is one of the few things that I don't like to buy in bulk. I'd rather buy 2 small packets of this than one economy line drum that fills up the back of my truck, because they do dry out. So this one has 30, and by the time I get to the 50th or 500th one in those jumbo packs, they're usually dry. So this is a good idea. What I'm going to recommend is getting a 3-ounce grease gun. At home, I have the lock and lube, and I have a mechanical and a pistol grip, a pump grip, a battery operated grease gun, you know, but on the road, we don't want to bring all that stuff. So this little pistol grip one can go back in its box. You can clean the tool really well, and I recommend this, as well as cleaning your hands. These are hand safe. So that you're not putting grease back into all of your tools. But this is nice and compact. It can fit somewhere in your vehicle. And what you can do is get the 3-ounce grease pack. This has the Lucas Extra Heavy Duty as well as the Red and Tacky number 2. Remember, Red and Tacky number 2 is what all of those Dexter and Lipper torsion axles use, so it's good to have one on the road. And the Extra Heavy Duty, we can talk about this, but it's good for almost everything else. I have a thing of shop towels here, and that's about everything. So let's get to work here and I'll show you what we're gonna do. Okay, so the first thing I do is I clean all this stuff up. I'll even clean out the dry graphite spray. I can start over, but these little towels do a good job. Nobody likes having grease all over everything when they're camping, but you can do a good job here with something that will fight the grease. You know, if I'm at home, I might spray this up and actually hit it with a pressure washer or something, but on the road, I'm just gonna do a decent job cleaning up some of this older grease. Now, we're gonna back this little needlepoint fitting out. We can save it. With my set, I actually don't have a 7mm, which I think this is. I do have a little ratchet here, which is gonna work just fine. This should come right out. Perfect. Nice. So a little needle fitting with paint stuck in it. And what we're going to put in its place is a 6mm straight grease zerk. I'm going to drop it on the ground a bunch first. That's important. You can take your cloth and just clean up a little bit where this is going in. And anyone who's got farm equipment is really used to swapping these out pretty regularly. But you don't have to tighten these down like Hercules. You can snug this up, whether you have a wrench or your socket set. There you go. You don't have to go nuts here. Now, we actually have a greasable fitting here. We don't have to use any special stuff. This is much easier. You could do this anytime you want. Now, they recommend that you do this frequently. I don't know what that means, but I can tell you that a couple small pumps while you're using your trailer is gonna be much better than waiting, like I typically did with the old style, until things are squawking and then trying to push all the grease through it. So these little 3-ounce guns with a pistol grip, you can use them with one hand. You don't have to use your second hand, which allows you to spin whatever you're doing while you grease it, which I like. Now, because we're filming this, I'm going to do it at this weird angle. If you can get the camera in here, you can see that fresh grease has come out from the 2 seams here. Now, if you're doing this frequently, that's all you need. You just need to get a little fresh grease out of there. If you haven't done it in a while, or you're starting from scratch, it's a good idea to sit here and push all of the old grease out. Get to where the same fresh grease that you're putting in is what's seeping out of those cracks. Wipe everything down good with your towels. You know, throw it right in a bag because you can really make a mess with this stuff. But that's the concept if you're switching greases or starting from scratch. If you're doing this routinely, you just have to see a little bit of movement out of those seams, spin it up and you're done. And then it's always a good idea because you're gonna touch this stuff on the road without your gloves on. It's always a good idea to try to just clean up as much of the excess as you can, and that will save you from making a mess at the campsite. Quick word on grease, because if I don't say this, somebody in the comment section is going to jump down my throat. But to get into this, I mean, it could be like a 12-hour class. So here's the rundown. Not all greases are compatible with each other, and it can actually be dangerous. And almost every old farmer that goes through mountains of this stuff will tell you, stick with one grease with all of the stuff, and you're going to be better off than trying to keep track of every little thing that's different. So the red and tacky number 2 is what they use on the axles of these trailers. So maybe for you, it might be a good idea to just go with red and tacky number 2 on everything. That's not a bad idea at all. If you really want to get a little bit more granular, I do like the black extra heavy duty on most of these things. And I actually like it on my axle bearings as well. But because not all grease is mixable, even if Lucas grease is, you can do a deep dive on that. What you want to do is push all of the other grease out and then stick with the same thing. So the first time you use it, push all of the old stuff out and then stick with the same product every time. And you can just do a couple pumps for maintenance. If you're mixing different formulas of grease, they can actually get acidic, break down, and actually create a worse friction environment than if you didn't grease anything at all. So what we're going to do now is we're going to back this last one out. There's only 2 of these. I'm going to put a grease fitting in here, and we're going to repeat the same thing. Now, this one, the grease actually looked a little worse. You could see that I pushed a little bit more through that I'm going to have to wipe off. You see that darker color? There's the fresh that poked through last, but this is pretty well black. So you could see it doesn't hit the Zerk. You have full clearance here. Depending on how you're towing, I could see why the company wanted one that is harder to shear off. But I just think it's easier to keep up with your maintenance, and overall just a much better idea to go with a standard grease fitting than that stupid needle thing that drives me nuts. So it's as simple as that. And now that these grease fittings are in, I can just give these a couple pumps when I'm on the road. Bring your gloves, bring a good cleanup tool that's going to work to clean all of your tools up as well as your hands. Yeah, it's simple as that. Now, quick thing here we could show you guys. I have this receiver hitch here. If you are like me and you use a lot of different trailers, so your drawbars coming in and out, in and out, in and out, I try to keep that clean. You can even use things like white lithium or even the dry graphite or a moly spray to keep that going. But if you have one trailer setup and this stays in your vehicle for a long period of time, this is a good opportunity to take some of this extra grease, clean that drawbar off, and you can just rub that grease on there. These will seize in. And if they're coming in and out all the time, it's not that big a deal, and you certainly don't want grease all over your hands when you're doing that. But if you have a setup like this that's going to stay in your vehicle for months at a time, you can use this extra grease and kind of wipe that down, and it's going to make sure it doesn't seize. And even though it's messy, it makes for a really good job. So let me know if you have one of these lock and roll hitches and that you've done these grease fitting upgrades, or if there's something that I'm missing in here. But I'm ready to put another 2,500 miles in here this week, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning into these videos. While you have your grease gun out, you also have a grease fitting on your arc jack. If you have one here, you'll be able to do that as well. And if you have ram jacks or stabilizing jacks on the back, there's a grease fitting on those. So having that little 3-ounce grease gun is really convenient on the road. You can give these a couple pumps and wipe them off. And if you have your red and tacky, you could do your axles on the road. I usually like to do that at home. That's usually good for, I don't know, depending on who you ask, 5,000 plus miles. So unless you're on a real long road trip, it's good to do those at home, but you can hit your grease fittings with that small gun as well. One little tip here that I noticed after towing quite a bit after doing this mod is that some folks actually have this loose enough that they still have clearance with the new Zerk added. For mine, it's pretty tight. So what happens is it catches. So that's not really a problem at all. I just slide it this way when I couple the trailer, and it's actually kind of handy. But I have lost my ability to go 360 degrees here. It does catch the Zerk. So I just tip it up, couple the trailer, and then latch it back down, and we're good to go.